especially in rural areas like where we are in right now. Today, we're here to understand their stories behind those numbers and the realities on ground. And I'm going to start off with Suzo, who works with an NGO. And of course, you're also very involved in sensitizing grassroots communities. Talk to us about the situation of child marriage in Zambia right now.
What we have found on the ground that is the major cause, number one, is the poverty levels. The poverty levels are so high that people simply cannot afford to provide for their children. So once a girl child reaches puberty, they feel the best way is to get her married.
Really? And of course, we have Madam Bridget, who is the Director of Children Development at the Ministry. And so if you're just going to give us a brief overview of what the actual situation is in terms of numbers as well, and why child marriage is mostly predominant.
In terms of numbers, I would like to say that since 2015, when the whole awareness broke out, we were at 42% as a country. And through the various interventions that we have done with communities, with our partners, we have come down to 29.
Yeah. I'll come back to you. Let me just come to Sister D very quickly. Sister D, you're calling for the castration of any man that abuses a child. Isn't that harsh enough? Why do you want this?
It has to be harsh. It has to be harsh. Why would somebody sleep with a child? I'm a mother, and the pain that I felt, if somebody abused or defiled my daughter, I would castrate them. I still insist on that.
Vanna here was actually married off at the age of 15, by the way. Vanna, tell us, what was the situation like for you? What led to your marriage at that age?
I got married because of poverty.
Did you want it or were you forced?
No. I wanted it.
So you wanted to be married?
Yes.
Do you feel that you would still want to be married, or you would have wished a different situation for you at that age?
I don't want to be married anymore.
Why? Why don't you want to be married anymore?
Because I am too young to be married, and I was taken out of the marriage by the authorities.
Corinne, you are 15. Is that correct? The same age that Vanna got married. At this age, would you want to be married?
I think for me personally, I would say no, because being a girl child, I believe to say there is more to life than getting married at a very young age. One of the reasons why I wouldn't want to get married is there are healthy risks that I would face in marriage, and also violence that I would face in marriage.
I mean, let me come to you, Suzio. You're also working with these children. Empowerment is very much key. But let's also understand the circumstances here. We understand that there are even graveyards for children who are married off. How do you see that as a child right advocate?
I think that's a very, very sad situation. I would consider Zambia a very deadly place to raise a child in. It came to our attention that there's actually a religious sect that believes and condones marrying off of children, very young, from 9 years old and going up, to men that are much older than them. And obviously, with the Children's Code Act now in place, criminalizing the act, they are beginning to withdraw, and we are beginning to learn that now the religious leaders themselves are actually becoming advocates. One of the very first things they do before they even begin their services is to speak against child marriages.
I'll come there, but let's also come back to you. In terms of really the laws that ban child marriage in the country. You have your statutory laws, you also have your customary laws, but are they very much aligned? And what is really the age for marriage here in Zambia?
Okay, the law now, as I speak to you, under the Children's Code Act, are aligned. When the code prohibits child marriage, it's customary and statutory. So that law will superintend over all the laws that talk about child marriage.
But you still have the communities that are actually banking on these customary laws, even though the actual law, the statutory law, should supersede all other laws. But then when situations like this happen, then what action do you take as a government?
As government, there's a punitive that comes with that. For example, under the Education Act, we are mandated to arrest a person who takes out a child out of school to get them into marriage for 15 years maximum. They can go in for that.
Let me just come to the police officer. Do you actually arrest people?
Obviously, we do.
That's our duty. We enforce the law.
How are children getting married? Is it actually their fellow peers or these intergenerational marriages that is happening?
Usually you find in peri-urban setups, children are married off to older men for exchange of dowry. And this is the case where you find families are living in poverty, so they want to be helped out of poverty. So they let their children go in order to reduce the number of feeding and also to just get some income from that. And I think where we need to start is actually change the term from child marriage. Because how is it making sense, a child getting married? You know, marriage was supposed to be a union, is supposed to be a union of people older, able to make decisions and are physically able to give, people who are actually able to make sure that they live to the term of marriage itself and everything it requires. And I'd like to also just add a comment to what the policeman had said. It's very interesting what policemen in Zambia are doing. So you find that when something like this comes up, maybe there is a defilement case of a child or something has happened, they'll arrest the person, but then they'll only be in custody for a short period. Next thing you see, the person is out roaming on the streets. Now, can you imagine how that is dragging us back in the fight against, trying to make sure that child marriages are abolished?
That's a very interesting point, Catherine. Of course, even child marriage is a case of defilement. At what age do children give or people give consent to sexual activity in Zambia?
Okay, so according to the Penal Code, Section 138, defilement means having unlawful knowledge with a girl below the age of 16.
16 years, but then what is the marriage? What's the limit for marriage, looking at the statutory laws?
Okay, so when it comes to statutory or civil marriage, it means 21 years and up. Yes.
But I find it a little bit conflicting, because if marriage is set back at 21 years and then you can consent to sex at 16 years, but at another way, I also see that 18 years, yes, you can marry at the age of 18 years in another case. So there is sort of a confusion in your laws there. But how do you interpret this as police officers?
Okay, the one you mentioned, we have a statutory civil marriage, and then there's also a customary marriage. So according to customs differ from one place to another. So some consider a girl ready for marriage as long as they reach puberty, obviously. Yes, so that's where the challenge is.
You wanted to add something?
There's been instances where children, especially girls, do get married willingly. So this happens when they have a boyfriend or a sugar daddy. So instead of being in school, especially those in boarding schools, the parents think they're in school, meanwhile they are at the guy's place, at the boy's place, and it ends up being a marriage because parents don't want the child to bring shame to the family. They end up being more like a maid. They end up cooking, cleaning, and also being beaten by the same man who promised them marriage. At the end of the day, they become more like a slave.
Is that why they have the graves? Just so maybe if they pass, they have the kids, they have them there in those graveyards?
Yes, I think that's one of the reasons, because most of the girls that die in these marriages die out of GBV, gender-based violence. So instead of them being put together the same symmetry, they end up being put differently, having their own grave.
Interesting. Yes, you wanted to add something.
Yes. So you find that when a girl becomes of age, women will start asking her, when are you getting married? Your friend is 17 years old. She already has a daughter. What are you thinking about that? So you find that as people constantly talk about that, children get to feel like they're obliged to get married. And then that, in turn, makes them go into marriages willingly.
Sujo, let's talk about the gender restrictive norms then. How patriarchal in nature is the Zambian society? Because it looks like there's a power imbalance here.
Yes, actually, in the rural areas, because culturally, we've always seen the man as the head of the house, and he makes all the decisions while the women are very passive. They are considered second class. That's culturally. But of course, now with the coming of women's human rights and gender equality and gender equity, things are beginning to change a little bit, because there are organizations like Advocacy for Child Justice, all kinds of such organizations that are going out in the rural areas and raising awareness so that women are aware of their rights, are aware that they also amount to something, and they can become something. They don't need to be second class.
So Mulema, what Sujo is saying is that your work as child activist is actually gaining meaning and impact in these communities. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. So the another issue that I want to comment on is the issue of polygamy and polyandry in the country. So it discovered to say that us as children, we learn from what we see. So here's a father who is married to five women, and then the youngest wife is probably 18 years old. It means that even the child will consider that to be true. So I think that is one problem that we are facing.
I think that is important. Let me come to you, Madam Bridget, because if children are actually emulating what they see, what I also realize is that these children are exposed to initiation ceremonies when they reach puberty as early as 9, 11, 12, and they've been taught how to please a man and how to take care of a home. Isn't that abusive enough?
That is why in the Children's Code Act there's a particular and specific clause referring to cultural rights, traditional rights, as well as religious rights, because we've seen the damage that it has caused to the community, and we want to enforce this by strengthening the laws that provide that.
All right, let me just come to Sister D. You think what she is saying, Madam Bridget, that they are actually rolling out plans to be able to address this mismatch. Do you think this will make any difference?
Wow. I hope to see a difference, because what my worry is, yes, we are getting these young girls out of marriages, but what are we doing for them? Where is the recreation? You know, what do they see in their environment? The best they are going to see, if it's not raining, they are not in the garden, then they are waiting to be married. When are we bringing people who've grown from this village, you know, who are nurses, who are police officers, to come and show these young people to say it is possible, it can be done? So I think we need to look at a wider range of how we are going to tackle the issue of child marriage, rather than we just withdraw this child, then what is next?
Okay, so the socio-economic structures are not in place really to prevent these children from getting married. Do you also agree to that?
Yes, I do, because in most cases, even in urban areas, instead of having a library, we have a lot of bars. They end up being having liquor, engaging themselves in drugs, and so on. At the end of the day, they end up being in a marriage. And also, just to add on to what Suzio and Sister D said, in homes, you know, times may have changed, but our mindsets have not. We teach our children to say a girl child is supposed to love the color pink, a boy child is supposed to love the color blue. When parents are buying toys for their children, they are buying cars for their guys, and they're buying doors for the ladies, for the girls. What is that teaching the girls? A girl is supposed to be in a kitchen. A girl is supposed to have children, to bear children. A girl is not supposed to drive. So we need to change what we believe. We need to change our mindset. It all starts from the mindset.
All right, let me just come to Madam Bridget here, because they're making very valid points. In terms of also school facilities, because these kids are supposed to be in school and not in marriages, how accessible have you brought these educational facilities to children?
So this time, schools are free. So we have diverted funds to ensure that this child has a bit of pocket money, transport money to get them to school. So we have that program running.
All right, yes, you wanted to say something, Corey?
Yes, when it comes to education, I would say education is there, but not a good quality education, because in most of the schools, when you start going around, you'll find they do not have enough facilities that can acquire children to have good education. That makes them leave school and prefer to get married at a very young age.
I feel government has done a lot really in trying to bring it back take girls back to school in terms of paperwork. But then like implementation as a government, I feel there is a lot that still needs to be done, even though we've made progress now. But I feel it shouldn't have taken us 17 years for us to enact the Children's Code Bill if we are really interested in the affairs of the children in the country. You know, so I feel like other than the paperwork that we're doing, we must make sure that when we put something on paper, the implementation is as thorough as the planning is.
I mean, Corinne, what do you have to say to that? Do you also believe that these laws are really not being implemented?
I feel to say they are being implemented, but so far there is no much change, because like in such areas where we are, if we start checking how many schools are in this area, they are not enough to contain everyone in this area. So I feel more schools supposed to be built so that each and every girl child can have an opportunity to go back to school. They cannot give an excuse to say we never had spaces in school, that's the reason why I never went back to school.
Let me just come back to you in terms of the socio-economic structures that are there to ensure those that are retrieved from these marriages have the capacity to stand on their own. Do you agree that this has been yielding much dividends at local level?
They can be given the cash transfer like the director is saying, but what are they going to do with it? Yeah. Do they have professionals who are going to teach them if they want to start a business? You know, if they want to venture into certain activities, who is teaching them? So for me, I think it's important that even as these girls are retrieved from early marriages, they need safe spaces. A space where today I ran away from my home because somebody somebody wants to marry me off, and I can find a space where I'll eat, where I'll sleep, where I'll a shelter. So it's very important that all those things are put in place.
Corinne, as a girl child, do you feel you have a safe space in this country?
Okay, for me, I might say we have, though it is not 99% safe, because...
What is a safe space to you?
For me, a safe place is a place where every child has got access to good quality of education, low average of early marriages or teenage pregnancies, a child who is free in our own country.
But when you look at all these indicators that Corinne has mentioned, it does signify that, based on everything we've said, that safe spaces are very much lacking for these children.
I will talk about, we have an adolescent health strategy which creates safe space. Of course, it's more in relation with sexual health, reproductive.
So we've established that the strategies are there, the policies, but are your people really going and making sure that these structures are actually practical?
Yeah, I'll also tell you that we have almost 90 one-stop centers where such cases are handled by a social welfare is there, a police officer is there, a nurse is there. And the ultimate is that the child will receive all this help, and then the social welfare will take it up to ensure that they are...
Okay, let me just come. I'm just going to come to Mulemo quickly. You tell me, is the government really upholding its promise that it has made to children, especially to girls, in the different conventions that they've signed and the policies that they've enacted? Would you say they're really upholding their promise made to children, especially to girls, because they're the most vulnerable?
No, they are not.
They are not, yeah?
So the thing is this, with the enactment of the Children's Court Bill, most of the key players in this issue are the CSOs, the civil society organizations. And then imagine a scenario where the government was to take up the mantle to say, we are going to be the front runners of promoting the Children's Court Act, making it aware to each and every girl child and boy child in the country. Imagine a scenario where the government is live on television discussing issues to do with the Children's Court Bill. Then that alone is going to make sure that people can see the interest that the government has in the rights and well-being of the children.
So what you're saying is they're not being very much practical about these laws. Do you agree as well?
Yes, I actually agree. And I feel like if we treat this matter as a pandemic, just like COVID-19, you know, we saw a lot of sensitization, government holding press briefings here and there. Every day we had updates on what is being done in order to protect children in the country. In order to make sure that, they protect the people in the country. If we can have, sensitizations that wide, we can have material on TV every day. We can have material on social media, material on radio about the Children's Code Act. Then the information can be sent to the grassroots, and the people on the grassroots will be able to make sure that they implement and they also spread the message as they can, so that everyone in the villages and everyone in rural and urban areas is protected.
Very much. So sensitization is key, but also as associations actually working towards this regard, do you feel you're getting much support from your partners and even government in driving much resources to these girl-led initiatives?
Yes, I believe government is doing their part, and everybody has to be concerted efforts. So religious leaders have to come in and do their part. We have the traditional leaders have to come in with a very strong voice, knowing that the greater part of where these child marriages or where these marriages are taking place of young people are in the rural areas. So if traditional leaders could stand up with a strong voice against this and just send a word, because their word is law in their chiefdoms, okay, I believe we are going to see a lot of results. And one of the things that we've come to realize is that when a child is retrieved from a marriage, of course, if she's not of school-going age, or if she feels she cannot handle school, how are we going to support that? We have the social cash transfer from the government. Then from organizations like ourselves, Advocacy for Child Justice, we have what we call empowerment programs. Okay. So we send those children to go to